They laughed when my brother got the business and I got dirt. Not even good dirt. No building. No utilities. No road access. Just a fenced-off square of dead land wedged between the river and the old industrial district, the kind of place even weeds refused to claim. The lawyer cleared his throat like he was apologizing on my parents' behalf. An empty lot, he said, sliding the deed across the table toward me. Parcel 17B. My brother Daniel didn't even try to hide his smile. 30 years old, CEO before the funeral flowers had wilted, keys to the family manufacturing company already in his pocket. He shook hands with the board members like this moment had been rehearsed since birth. I got condolences. People patted my shoulder. Someone whispered, "I'm sure your parents had their reasons." Yeah. They always do. At the time, I didn't notice the way the lawyer avoided Daniel's eyes when he mentioned the lot. I didn't notice the clause highlighted in yellow. I didn't notice that the deed was older than the business itself. All I knew was this. My parents were gone. My brother had everything. And I had nothing but land no one wanted. 3 weeks later, a woman I'd never met knocked on my door and asked me one question that changed everything. "Do you know what you're standing on?" I didn't cry at my parents' funeral. That fact alone earned me looks, side glances from cousins I barely knew, from old friends who remembered me as the quieter one, the thoughtful one. The one who was supposed to feel things deeply. I felt plenty. Just not in ways that leaked out of my eyes. Grief, for me, sat heavy and still, like a weight placed carefully on my chest. It didn't move. It didn't scream. It just made breathing harder than it used to be. The chapel smelled like polished wooden lilies. Too clean. Too deliberate. My mother would have approved. She believed grief should be tidy, contained, dignified. Daniel stood at the front, shoulders straight, black suit tailored too well for a man who claimed he hated formal wear. He looked composed in that way people mistake for strength. If you didn't know him, you'd think he was holding himself together out of love. I knew better. Daniel had been preparing for this moment since college. Maybe longer. Our parents' deaths were tragic, yes, but also inevitable. And inevitability, to Daniel, was just another word for planning opportunity. After the service, I lingered near the back while everyone else flowed toward him. Board members. Partners. Investors who smelled blood and legacy in equal measure. They shook his hand like it already belonged to them. "Your father would be proud," one of them said. Daniel nodded, solemn. "I intend to honor him." I wondered if that was true, or just useful. The will reading happened 3 days later, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the city. My mother loved symbolism. Power. Height. Perspective. Daniel arrived early. Of course he did. He stood by the window, phone in hand, murmuring to someone about continuity and market confidence. When I walked in, he glanced over his shoulder and smiled. There it was. That familiar, almost brotherly grin that always came with a blade hidden behind it. "Hey," he said. "You holding up?" "Fine," I said. He studied my face, like he was searching for cracks. "You don't look fine." "I don't perform grief on a schedule," I replied. A flicker of irritation crossed his eyes. Gone as fast as it came. Daniel hated unpredictability. He loved systems. Hierarchies. Clear winners. I took a seat at the far end of the table. The lawyer arrived precisely on time. Mr. Halvorsen. Gray-haired, thin-lipped, eyes that had seen too many families fracture over paper and ink. He didn't waste words. "I'll begin," he said, opening a leather folder. "As you know, your parents updated their estate plans 5 years ago. The documents before us are final." Daniel folded his hands. I leaned back in my chair, already bracing myself. "The business came first. Redwood Industrial Holdings," Halvorsen said, "including all subsidiaries, contracts, and physical assets, is to be transferred in full to Daniel Mercer." No gasp. No surprise. Just nods from the invisible audience we all knew was listening. Daniel exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for years. He didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed. The house came next. The lake property. Investment accounts. Art. Trusts. Daniel received most of it. I received pauses. And to Elias Mercer, Halvorsen continued, eyes flicking briefly toward me. Your parents leave parcel 17B. He slid a single document across the table. 1 page. 1 deed. Daniel blinked. That's it. Halvorsen hesitated, just a fraction of a second too long. Yes. I picked up the paper. Empty lot. No structures. Zoned industrial but undeveloped. No utilities. No access road listed. A useless square of dirt. I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it, sharp, incredulous, loud in the sterile room. You're kidding, I said. Daniel turned toward me fully now. Eli. They leave you the empire, I continued, holding up the deed, and I get a patch of ground no one's ever bothered to build on. Halvorsen cleared his throat. Your parents were very specific. Specific about what? I asked. Punishing me. Daniel stood. That's enough. I looked up at him. My older brother. Golden child. Heir apparent. Did you know? I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. They always said you weren't interested in the business, he said finally. This makes sense. Does it? He shrugged. Land is land. You could sell it. Halvorsen shifted uncomfortably. Actually, there are restrictions. I snapped my gaze back to him. What kind of restrictions? The lawyer hesitated again. That same micropause. Parcel 17B cannot be sold without unanimous consent from adjacent property holders. Adjacent property holders. I repeated. That's half the district. Yes. Daniel frowned. Why would they do that? Silence filled the room. They trusted Elias, Halvorsen said carefully. In different ways. Daniel laughed once, sharp and dismissive. So this is sentimental nonsense. I folded the deed and slipped it into my jacket. Guess they finally said what they really thought of me, I muttered. No one corrected me. I didn't visit the lot right away. For weeks, I avoided it. The deed sat in my desk drawer like an accusation. Every time I opened it, I imagined my parents' faces, my mother's calm certainty, my father's quiet, unreadable eyes. They weren't cruel people. They weren't careless either. Which made the whole thing worse. The lot lived in my head like a splinter. Why that land? Why nothing else? Daniel didn't bring it up again. He was too busy being congratulated, interviewed, praised. Headlines called him visionary. A natural successor. I became the footnote. The other son. 3 weeks after the will reading, I was eating reheated pasta in my apartment when someone knocked on my door. Hard. Deliberate. I opened it to find a woman in her 40s, dark coat, hair pulled back tight. She didn't smile. Elias Mercer, she asked. Yes. She held up a badge I didn't recognize. Not police. Not corporate. Do you own parcel 17B? A chill ran through me. Who's asking? She glanced past me, as if checking for listeners. Someone who needs to know, she said. Do you understand what you inherited? I swallowed. An empty lot. Her eyes sharpened. No, she said. You inherited the switch. I stared at her. The switch for what? She leaned in just enough for me to smell rain on her coat. For everything your brother thinks he owns. I didn't invite her in at first. People who show up unannounced and speak in riddles rarely bring good news. Still, there was something about the way she stood there, steady, patient, like she already knew how this conversation would end. You should come inside, I said finally. Or say what you came to say and leave. She considered me for a moment, then stepped past me without waiting for permission. Coffee? I offered out of habit. No. She sat at my kitchen table, hands folded, eyes tracking the room the way inspectors do. The way people do when they're memoizing exits. My name is Mara Klein, she said. I work in municipal infrastructure oversight. That's not a real job, I said. She smiled faintly. It is when things break. I leaned against the counter. You said I inherited a switch. Yes. For what? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked, have you been to the lot? No. Good. Then you haven't done anything irreversible. That word landed heavier than it should have. Start talking, I said. Mara reached into her coat and pulled out a folded map. Not glossy. Not modern. Yellowed at the edges, creased from use. She spread it across the table. The city looked wrong. Roads bent where they shouldn't. Property lines overlapped. And right in the center, highlighted in red, was parcel 17B. What am I looking at? I asked. A control parcel, she said. An anchor. For what? For access. She tapped the map. Every major utility corridor in the district, water, power, fiber, waste, passes under or through your lot. That's impossible. It's intentional. I laughed under my breath. You're telling me my parents built the city? No, she said. I'm telling you your grandfather helped redesign it. That shut me up. Mara watched my reaction closely. Did your parents ever talk about him? Only that he was careful, I said. Quiet. He worked in logistics. She nodded. He worked in leverage. She slid another document across the table. This one stamped and signed, date stretching back decades. Parcel 17B isn't valuable because of what's on it, she continued. It's valuable because of what can't move without it. I skimmed the pages. Easements. Contingencies. Fail-safes. Clauses that made my stomach tighten. If ownership of parcel 17B changes, I read aloud, all adjacent infrastructure modifications require owner consent. My throat went dry. That's everything. Yes. I looked up. Why hasn't anyone challenged this? They have, Mara said. Quietly. Repeatedly. And every time, it fails. Why? She met my eyes. Because the language is old enough to be untouchable. And because your family buried it inside laws no one reads anymore. I pushed away from the table, pacing. So my brother's company depends on that land, she finished. Expansion permits. Utility upgrades. New logistics hubs. Every growth plan Redwood Industrial has filed in the last 10 years crosses your lot. I stopped. Daniel's face flashed in my mind. Confident. Certain. Untouchable. He doesn't know, I said. No, Mara agreed. And if he did, he'd already be trying to take it from you. As if summoned by the thought, my phone buzzed. Daniel. I didn't answer. Mara stood. They're watching now. Not him, others. Corporations. The city council. People who just realized the empty lot changed hands. My pulse quickened. How do you know? Because they always move fast, she said, heading for the door. And because I was sent to make sure you didn't sell it by accident. She paused, hand on the knob. One more thing, she added. Whatever you do, do not build on it. Do not lease it. Do not alter it. Why? She looked back at me, eyes sharp and serious. Because the moment you change the surface, she said, they can argue you changed the function. Then she was gone. I visited the lot the next morning. Fog hung low over the industrial district, swallowing sound. The fence was rusted but intact. A single padlock dangled open, as if someone had forgotten to secure it, or wanted me to walk in. The ground was uneven. Hard-packed dirt, scattered gravel. No signs. No markings. Nothing special. And yet, standing there, I felt it. The pressure. Like the city was holding its breath beneath my feet. A semi rumbled past on the nearby road. Somewhere, machinery whined to life. All of it connected. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. This time, I answered. Hey, he said, voice light. Too light. We need to talk. About what? I asked. There was a pause. About your lot, he said. Funny thing, I just found out it's more important than we thought. I smiled for the first time since the funeral. Yeah, I said softly. Funny thing. Daniel didn't waste time pretending anymore. He showed up at my apartment that afternoon, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled like he was already negotiating. He hadn't asked if I was home. He never did, growing up. He just assumed the door would open. "Eli," he said, stepping inside, eyes scanning the place like he was measuring it for resale. "You should have picked up earlier." "I was busy," I said. "Doing what?" "Standing on my land." That got his attention. He turned, studying my face now, not as a brother, but as a variable. "You've been to the lot," he said. "Yes. And I finally understand why Mom used to say, some things are valuable because they don't look like anything." His jaw tightened. "You talked to someone?" "I listened," I corrected. Daniel exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. "Okay. Good. Then we can have an adult conversation." I crossed my arms. "You're welcome to try." He leaned against the counter like he owned it. Like he owned me. "That land is causing complications," he said. "Permits. Expansion timelines. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make investors nervous." "Sounds stressful." "It is," he snapped, then softened. "Which is why I want to solve it cleanly." I waited. "I'll buy the lot from you," he said. "Above market. Generous." I laughed. "There is no market." "Exactly. Which means I get to define it." I shook my head. "You can't buy it." His smile flickered. "Everyone can be bought." "Not this," I said. "And not from me." Daniel straightened. The room shifted with him, like gravity had recalculated. "You don't know what you're holding," he said quietly. "I know exactly what I'm holding," I replied. "You just never thought I'd be the one holding it." That landed. He stepped closer. "You think this is some kind of win? That you finally beat me?" "No," I said. "I think Mom and Dad made sure you couldn't beat everything." Silence stretched between us. Then Daniel smiled again, but this one didn't reach his eyes. "Be careful," he said. "People don't like surprises in places this expensive." He left without another word. The offers started the next day. Emails. Calls. Letters hand-delivered by messengers who pretended not to know who sent them. Development firms. Utility consortiums. Shell companies with vague names and very specific demands. Each one wanted access. Easements. Temporary construction rights. Every one of them came with urgency wrapped in politeness. "This is time-sensitive. We'd hate for this to become adversarial. We're authorized to be flexible." Mara was right. They were watching. I took her advice and did nothing. No replies. No counteroffers. That silence cost people money. Real money. The kind that shows up in emergency board meetings and late-night phone calls. On the fourth day, the city called. A man named Wallace introduced himself as Deputy Director of Urban Development. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "would like to discuss optimizing Parcel 17B for the good of the district." "For whose good?" I asked. A pause. "The public." "Funny," I said. "The public hasn't called me once." He laughed politely. "You're holding critical infrastructure hostage." "No," I replied. "I'm holding a deed." "We can compel access," he said. "You can try," I said. "My family already did." "You lost." Silence. Then, softer, "You don't want this fight." I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city hummed outside my window, unaware, or maybe very aware, that something had changed. I thought about my parents. About the way my father used to test me at the dinner table, asking questions that didn't have obvious answers. About my mother's habit of double-checking locks no one else noticed. They weren't punishing me. They were preparing me. My phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m. Unknown number. I answered. "You're making powerful enemies," a woman's voice said. "I already have a brother," I replied. She chuckled. "Then you understand leverage." "Who is this?" "Someone who can make your life very difficult," she said. Or very profitable. Not interested. You will be, she said calmly. Because tomorrow morning, the city will declare your lot a safety concern. My blood ran cold. On what grounds? On whatever grounds they need, she said. Contamination. Structural risk. Public hazard. That's a lie. So is most power, she said. We'll talk again. The call ended. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. They weren't asking anymore. They were moving. And for the first time, I understood the real cost of owning something everyone depends on. The notice was taped to the fence by sunrise. Bright orange. Official seal. Too many words for something that meant only one thing. Temporary restriction order. Public safety review. I read it twice, then a third time, as if repetition would make it less real. Contamination risk. Subsurface instability. Pending investigation. All lies. Carefully shaped ones. A city truck idled at the curb, two men in reflective vests pretending not to watch me as I stood there gripping the chain-link fence. One of them raised a phone to his ear the moment I looked his way. They wanted me rattled. I took photos. Close-ups. Wide shots. Time stamps. Then I called Mara. She answered on the second ring. They moved, I said. I know, she replied. I'm already fighting it. They are claiming contamination. They always do. It's the fastest lever. What happens now? She exhaled. Now they test how badly you want to keep breathing. That wasn't comforting. By noon, Daniel called again. I heard about the city order, he said, voice laced with concern that almost sounded real. This is exactly what I warned you about. You didn't warn me, I said. You threatened me. Same thing, he replied. Different delivery. I leaned against the hood of my car, staring at the lot like it might speak back. This doesn't have to get ugly, he continued. Transfer the deed to me. I'll absorb the fallout. Protect you. From what? From everyone else. I laughed bitterly. You're not protecting me. You're protecting your expansion plan. A pause. Eli, he said, softer now. You don't have the stomach for this. That stung, not because it was true, but because he'd always believed it. I don't need the stomach, I said. I have the land. He hung up. Mara met me at her office that afternoon. Windowless. Concrete walls. The kind of place where decisions were made quietly and documented later. They are bluffing, she said, spreading reports across the table. Mostly. They can't seize it outright without triggering a cascade. Too many dependencies. Too much paper. But they can scare me, I said. Yes. And ruin me. Yes. I rubbed my face. So what do I do? She slid a thin folder toward me. You read. Inside were documents older than my parents. Handwritten notes. Diagrams. This is your grandfather's work, she said. He designed parcel 17B as a control choke. A neutral node. No buildings. No obvious value. Why? Because buildings can be condemned. Land like this can't. I flipped a page and froze. A clause, underlined twice. In the event of municipal overreach, owner retains emergency override of access pathways. What does that mean? I asked. Mara's eyes didn't leave my face. It means, she said slowly, that if they push too far, you can legally halt infrastructure flow through your parcel. My heart pounded. You mean water, power, data, temporarily, selectively. That would cripple half the district. Yes. And Redwood Industrial. Yes. I pushed the folder away. That's insane. That, she said gently, is leverage. I didn't sleep that night. I kept imagining switches flipping. Lights going out. Elevators stopping between floors. Servers humming into silence. People panicking. Daniel scrambling. The city realizing too late that the empty lot wasn't passive. It was a trigger. At 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. Mara. They're escalating, she said. Emergency council meeting. Eminent domain discussion. They can't, I said. They're going to try. I sat up. What do I do? There was a pause. Long, heavy. Nothing, she said. Unless they cross the line. And if they do? Her voice hardened. Then you remind them who controls the ground they are standing on. The next morning, the power flickered in my building. Just once. Just long enough for me to notice. My phone lit up with messages. Missed calls. News alerts. Unexplained utility fluctuation in industrial district. I stared at the screen. I hadn't touched anything. Which meant someone else had. And if they were testing the system. I smiled grimly. So could I. I didn't flip the switch right away. That's the thing people misunderstand about power. They think it announces itself. That it needs spectacle. Darkness. Sirens. Real power waits. I spent the morning reading everything my grandfather had left behind. Not just the clauses and diagrams, but the margins. The scribbled notes. The places where his handwriting grew tight and angry. Never threaten first. Let them reveal their dependence. Control is most effective when invisible. By noon, the city council's emergency session was streaming online. I watched from my couch, coffee untouched, as officials spoke in careful language about public welfare and necessary intervention. Daniel sat behind them, off camera but unmistakable in posture, leaning forward, invested. He'd chosen his side. Mara texted me one word. Now? I stared at the screen. They hadn't seized the land yet. They were still circling. Still pretending this was procedural. Not yet, I typed back. Minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. This is Councilwoman Reyes, a woman said briskly. Mr. Mercer, we need your cooperation. You already have it, I replied. I haven't done anything. That's not cooperation, she snapped. That's obstruction. Legally, I said, it's ownership. She inhaled sharply. You're playing a dangerous game. So are you, I said. Only I know the rules. Silence. Then, colder, if you force our hand, we will take what we need. You'll try, I said. I hung up. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The first outage wasn't dramatic. A single fiber reroute. 15 minutes. One logistics firm lost connectivity to its warehouse management system. Enough to cost them thousands. Not enough to make headlines. Mara called me immediately. They felt that. Good, I said. Let them feel uncertainty. By evening, my email inbox was chaos. Subject lines screamed urgency. System failure? Permit review on hold. We need to talk. Daniel called again. This time, he didn't bother pretending to be calm. What did you do? He demanded. Nothing illegal, I said. Eli. Listen to me, I interrupted. For once. He went quiet. I'm not here to take your company, I said. I'm here to make you understand something. Which is? You were given power, I said. I was given control. His breathing was audible now. You flip one more switch, he said, and you'll burn everything down. No, I replied. I'll prove that it was always flammable. The city backed off. Not publicly. Quietly. The way institutions do when they realize they've misjudged the balance. The restriction order became a review. The review became a delay. The delay stretched into silence. Daniel stopped calling. Mara met me at the lot that night. The fog had returned, thick and heavy, swallowing the fence like it wanted the land back. You did it, she said. For now, I replied. She looked at me carefully. You understand this doesn't end. I know. Once people learn where the switch is, she said, they'll never stop trying to reach it. I stared out at the dark ground. Then I'll make sure they're afraid to touch it. She smiled, just a little. Your grandfather would have liked you, she said. Weeks passed. The city stabilized. Deals were rewritten. Redwood Industrial's expansion plans shrank, quietly, expensively. Daniel and I didn't speak. Until one night, he showed up at the lot. No suit. No entourage. Just my brother, standing on dirt he didn't own. You won, he said. I shook my head. No. I balanced things. He looked around, jaw tight. Mom and Dad always knew. Yes. They trusted you, he said. Yes. And they never trusted me, he finished. I met his eyes. They trusted you with growth. They trusted me with restraint. He laughed bitterly. Same thing, in opposite directions. We stood there in silence. Finally, he spoke. What do you want? I thought about that. About the city. The land. The quiet hum beneath my feet. I want a seat, I said. Not at your table. At every table. Daniel swallowed. Then, he said slowly, you're going to need more than doubt. I smiled. I already have more than you think. After Daniel left, I stayed. The fog thickened until the city became a rumor beyond the fence. Streetlights blurred into halos. The ground beneath my boots felt solid, unchanging, but I knew better now. Nothing about this place was passive. Mara's words echoed in my head. Your grandfather would have liked you. I didn't like that. Not because I disagreed, but because I'd never been sure I liked him. Growing up, my grandfather was a shadow more than a man. He died when I was 10, but even before that, he was mostly absence. Long walks. Closed doors. Phone calls that stopped when you entered the room. Daniel used to say he was boring. I used to watch him. The way he listened more than he spoke. The way he noticed patterns, traffic flows, delivery schedules, the rhythm of the city itself. I never understood what he was teaching me until now. The box was still in my parents' attic. Mara had told me about it. Look for anything sealed, anything they didn't throw away. It took an hour of digging through dust and old winter coats before I found it. Metal. Heavy. No label. Inside were notebooks. Maps. Cassette tapes. And a letter with my name on it. Not Daniel's. Mine. My hands shook as I opened it. Elias. If you're reading this, it means your parents are gone and the land is yours. I'm sorry for the burden. You were chosen not because you're the smartest, or the strongest, but because you hesitate. Daniel pushes. You listen. That matters more than you know. I swallowed hard. This city was never built to be fair. It was built to move. Goods, money, power. Someone had to be able to stop it. That someone must never want to. I sat down on the attic floor, breath shallow. The lot is not a weapon. It is a brake. Use it only when the cost of motion becomes greater than the cost of stillness. If you're anything like me, you'll hate this responsibility. Good. That means you're still human. I folded the letter slowly. Now I understood. They hadn't trusted me because I was overlooked. They trusted me because I didn't crave control. The tapes explained the rest. My grandfather had helped design the city's industrial expansion after a massive strike decades ago. Infrastructure had become the battleground, utilities leveraged against labor, access used as punishment. He'd seen what happened when no one could say stop. So he'd built a failsafe. Quiet. Boring. Invisible. A patch of land no one would fight over, until it was too late. And when he chose who would inherit it, he skipped the son who wanted to build empires. He chose the grandson who asked why. Daniel came back into my life slowly after that. Not as a conqueror. Not as a victim. As a man recalibrating. We met sometimes. Talked in half-truths. Negotiated boundaries without naming them. Redwood Industrial survived, but leaner. Slower. Less reckless. The city learned something too, though it would never admit it out loud. Some power doesn't live in boardrooms or titles. It lives in restraint. In the hands of someone who knows exactly what it would cost to use it, and chooses not to. Years later, When a reporter asked me why I never developed Parcel 17B, I gave the only answer that was true. Because it already does its job. They laughed. That was fine. The city kept moving. The lights stayed on. The switch stayed untouched. And beneath the ground, the lot waited. Quiet, patient, in control. The city didn't come for the lot directly. That would have been clumsy. Instead, they came for me. First, my bank flagged my accounts for irregular review. Then my landlord called, apologetic, nervous, about zoning compliance issues in my building. A week later, my name appeared in an article questioning unelected individuals holding disproportionate influence over public infrastructure. That was when I knew. They'd stopped pretending this was about land. It was about example. Mara warned me. They're isolating you. Making you look unstable. Dangerous. Am I? I asked. She didn't answer. That silence was louder than any siren. Daniel asked to meet. Neutral ground. A cafe near the river. No glass towers. No boardrooms. He looked tired. Not defeated. Burned down to essentials. They're going to crash the grid, he said without preamble. I blinked. What? Controlled failure, he continued. Rolling blackouts. Supply chain disruption. Then they'll blame you. I leaned back slowly. And you know this how? Because Redwood was offered immunity, he said. If I publicly support eminent domain. There it was. The final fork. What did you say? I asked. Daniel stared at his coffee. I asked for time. For once, I said, you hesitated. He looked up at me then. Really looked. I never understood why they chose you, he said. Now I do. Silence hung between us. If the grid fails, he went on, people get hurt. Hospitals. Transit. Not theory, reality. I know, I said. And you're the only one who can stop it. Yes. But if you do, he said quietly, they win. That was the truth. The blackout started at 2:11 a.m. 3 districts. Not enough to panic the city, just enough to make headlines. System failure under investigation. I stood at the edge of the lot, phone in hand, the city blinking unevenly beyond the fence. Mara was with me. Pale. Focused. They're forcing you, she said. Yes, I replied. They are. My finger hovered over the screen. One command. Temporary override. Legal. Devastating. Precise. If I activated it, the blackout would stop. The city would stabilize. And they'd have proof the switch was real. If I didn't, people would suffer. I'd be blamed. And the system would stay hidden. My grandfather's words echoed. The lot is a brake. Use it only when the cost of motion becomes greater than the cost of stillness. I made my choice. I activated the override. Not wide. Not dramatic. Just enough. Power surged back, hospitals first, then transit, then everything else. The city exhaled. And somewhere, very far away, people realized I was no longer theoretical. They came for me at dawn. Not police. Not warrants. Offers. Council seats. Advisory roles. Immunity. Control with permission. Daniel called once. You saved lives. I know, I said. And doomed yourself, he added. Yes, I said again. I refused everything. Instead, I did the one thing they couldn't undo. I placed the lot into a trust. Permanent. Autonomous. Conditional. No single owner. No transfer. No leverage. The switch stayed, but no one could hold it alone again. Including me. Years later, Parcel 17B is still empty. No buildings. No signs. Just dirt. Students study it in urban planning courses. Officials argue about it in closed rooms. Conspiracy forums obsess over it. Daniel runs a smaller company now. Smarter. Slower. Mara teaches. And me? I walk the city at night sometimes. Watching lights stay on. Trains run. Systems behave. I don't control everything. That was never the point. I just make sure no one else ever does. Not victory. Not defeat. A quiet piece of land. An untouched switch. And a city that keeps moving. Because someone finally knew when to stop it.